Welcome to San Academy Pallikaranai, Class 6 Social Science. So, this is part 2 video of chapter number 5 Kings, Kingdoms, and an Early Republic from History. Topics to be covered: taxes, changes in agriculture, a closer look on Magadha, a closer look on Vaji, Ajatasattu, and Vajis. Taxes. As the rulers of the Mahajanapadas were building huge forts, maintaining big armies, they needed more resources and they needed officials to collect these. So instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by the people, as in the case of Raja of the Janapadas, they started collecting regular taxes. Taxes on crops were the most important. This was because most people were farmers. Usually, the tax was fixed at 1/6 of what was produced. This was known as baga or a share. There were taxes on craftspersons as well. These could have been in the form of labor. For example, a weaver or a smith may have had to work for a day every month for the king. Herders were also expected to pay taxes in the form of animals and animal produce. There were also taxes on goods that were brought and sold through trade. And hunters and gatherers also had to provide forest produce to the Raja. Changes in agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron plowshares. This meant that heavy clayey soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare, so that more grain could be produced. Secondly, people began transplanting paddy. This meant that instead of scattering seeds on the ground from which plants would sprout, saplings were grown and then planted in the fields. This led to increased production as many more plants survived. However, it was backbreaking work. Generally, slave men and women, dasas and dasis, and landless agricultural laborers called kamakaras had to do this work. A closer look on Magadha. Magadha became the most important Mahajanapada in about 200 years. Many rivers such as the Ganga and Son flowed through Magadha. This was important for transport, water supplies, making the land fertile. Also, parts of Magadha were forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for armies. Forests also provided wood for building houses, carts, and chariots. Besides, there were iron ore mines in the region that could be tapped to make strong tools and weapons. Magadha had two very powerful rulers, Bimbisara and Ajatsattu, who used all possible means to conquer other Janapadas. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler. He extended his control up to the northwestern part of the subcontinent. Rajagriha, present day Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magadha for several years. Later, the capital was shifted to Pataliputra, uh, present day Patna. More than 2300 years ago, a ruler named Alexander, who lived in Macedonia and Europe, wanted to become a world conqueror. Of course, he didn't conquer the world but did conquer parts of Egypt and West Asia and came to the Indian subcontinent, reaching up to the banks of BS. When he wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused. They were scared as they had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots, and elephants. A closer look on Vaji. While Magadha became a powerful kingdom, Vaji, with its capital at Vaishali, Bihar, was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. In a Gana or a Sangha, there were not one but many rulers. Sometimes, even when thousands of men ruled together, each one was known as a Raja. These Rajas performed rituals together. They also met in assemblies and decided what had to be done and how through discussions and debate. For example, if they were attacked by an enemy, they met to discuss what should be done to meet the threat. However, women, dasas, and kamakaras could not participate in these assemblies. Ajatsattu and the Vajis. Both the Buddha and Mahavira belong to Ganas or Sanghas. Some of the most vivid descriptions of life in the Sanghas can be found in Buddhist books. This is an account of the Vajis from the Dig Nikaya, a famous Buddhist book which contains some of the speeches of Buddha. These were written down about 2300 years ago. Ajatsattu wanted to attack the Vajis. He sent his minister named Vasakara to the Buddha to get his advice on the matter. The Buddha asked whether the Vajis met frequently in full assemblies. When he heard that they did, he replied that the Vajis would continue to prosper as long as they held full and frequent public assemblies, they met and acted together, they followed established rules, they respected, supported, and listened to elders. Vaji women were not held by force or captured. Chaityas, the local shrines, were maintained in both towns and villages. Wise saints who followed different beliefs were respected and allowed to enter and leave the country freely. Nevertheless, these lasted for a very long time, till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Ganas or Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers. Thank you.